Ahoy hoy fellow bookworms, my name is Caroline and I like to read books, so let's talk about them. I have some super exciting news to share with you guys, and actually it's not that exciting, it's just that I finally tried audiobooks. I've always been one of those people who thought the only way to experience a book was to read the physical copy, but I'm slowly changing my ways. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but my chronic migraines got really bad again recently, and what that meant was that for the entire month of March and for most of April, I was unable to read physical books at all because my eyes were so sensitive, and if I read physical books, it would strain them and like set off migraines and stuff. So I could not read physical books, and I tried audiobooks, and I'm actually surprised by how much I enjoyed the experience. In the month and a half that I was unable to read, I listened to 6 audiobooks, and there was only one that I disliked, and the others were all really excellent. So I thought I would make this video and just quickly talk about the books and what I thought of them, what I thought of the narrators, and what I thought about the experience of listening to audiobooks. All of the books that I listened to were ones that I had read before because I was like super doped up on medication at this point, and I was kind of zoning in and out of things, and I just thought it was a really great opportunity to reread some things. So the first 2 that I listened to are The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, both by Patrick Rothfuss, and the narrator for both of these is Rupert Dagis. And oh my god, he was a phenomenal narrator. Like seriously, I don't think I could have started audiobooks with a better narrator. He just did such an amazing job, and I found myself getting so immersed in the story. Like, I mean, when I first read the story, I was definitely immersed in it, but listening to it was completely different. I found myself enjoying different aspects more. Listening to the accents he did for characters was a really enjoyable experience because I don't do accents in my head when I read, so that was something I really loved. It was just really great, and I loved listening to him because I feel like he enjoys reading the story, and that was really fun. I also really loved his pacing while he read both books. There were times when it was almost too slow and I was tempted to listen to it in a faster speed, but then we get to a combat scene or something a little more fast-paced, and he would speed it up just a little bit, and I would find myself getting really excited and swept up in the scene, which was really amazing. Honestly though, what I really loved was the characters' voices. There were characters who had accents, some were kind of Irish and stuff like that, but there were also characters whose voices changed as the books went because they were aging, and so their voices were kind of maturing, and once I realized that, I was completely blown away. After that, I listened to The Slow Regard of Silent Things, also by Patrick Rothfuss, but unlike the other 2 books, this one is actually narrated by the author himself, and I found it really enjoyable. The story follows a side character from the series, and so it is a little different, but I loved the author's narration. I think he has this really soothing voice in a weird way. It's very deep, and so it was kind of a contrast to the story, which is about this quite petite little girl running around under the university. I just loved it. I found it to be quite a whimsical story, and his voice brought something really unique to it, and it had this really nice rhythm to it where he would kind of draw out certain words, and it was just, I don't know, it was really nice. I don't have heaps to say about this one because it is quite short, and I'm going to admit it because I was doped up. I did sleep through a fair chunk of this one because medication was very strong and I didn't put on a sleep timer, so I would just wake up randomly and be like, what's happening? This was definitely a really good audiobook to listen to, and I think Pat Rothfuss was an amazing narrator, and I think he was really good for this one because as good as Rupert Dagis is, I don't think this was the story for him to narrate, so I'm really glad that Pat Rothfuss did it. The next book I listened to is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, which was narrated by Will Wheaton, and this is the audiobook that I didn't particularly enjoy. I always describe Ready Player One as one of my all-time favorite books, but listening to the audiobook, I found myself enjoying it a lot less. The narration was just very flat. Will Wheaton didn't do any voices for any of the characters, and I don't think that's necessarily a huge problem, but he just didn't do anything creative with his voice. Everything was read in one tone all the time. A lot of the time he would read things like they were a question when they weren't, which I just found really frustrating. But on top of that, there were some things with the story that really annoyed me that hadn't actually bothered me first time around. One of these was how infuriatingly good at everything Wade's character is and how he just perfects everything on the first fucking try. I also really didn't like Wade's treatment of a female character in this book. He basically stalks her at one point, and it's just, there's nothing said about it. It's just treated as though it's completely normal, and I don't remember noticing that when I read the physical copy, but listening to it, it was all I could think about was that I was listening to him describe how he was stalking her. So that's definitely something I noticed with audiobooks, was that I picked up on different things. But yeah, I didn't really enjoy the experience of listening to this one that much, so I was glad that it was quite a short audiobook. The final two books that I listened to are books 1 and 2 in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. I only have book 1 with me because my boyfriend is borrowing the other one, but both of these were narrated by Michael Kramer and I really enjoyed them. Overall, I think Michael Kramer is an excellent narrator, but I will say it took me a while to kind of settle into his narration because I spent ages comparing him to Rupert Dagus. What I loved about listening to the two Mistborn books was that number one, it's Mistborn and I fucking love Mistborn, but also that Michael Kramer does voices for the characters, which I've learned is something I really enjoy and appreciate because it makes it really easy to separate the characters when I'm listening. I especially enjoyed his narration when there was a lot of characters in a room at a time because it made it very easy to follow what was going on. I also really enjoyed his narration during like fight scenes and stuff like that because he paced it really well and made it easy to follow for me. So those are my thoughts on audiobooks, and overall I found it to be quite an enjoyable thing to do. So I'm going to keep listening to audiobooks, just not super frequently, so I would really appreciate some recommendations down in the comments. But that's it for this video, so be sure to like this one and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you whenever I upload next. Toodaloo!